right, let's start the recording. Let's start the session now. So, welcome all again. Second day, we are trying to understand the data science paradigm, what exactly it can do, and how can we take benefits out of this. And as part of the journey, yesterday we discussed about the applications of data science. We have looked into one use case. Today, again, we will talk about another use case on how we can actually implement data science in a regular business scenario. And we also try to understand the project management stages, the steps. And to begin with, the data science and machine learning differences have been understood. And when we talk about analytics, we understood that there are 4 stages of analytics, 4 levels that we can actually work with the data. The first level would be descriptive. It's basically talking about what has already happened. Then we have diagnostic. And this stage, we are talking about why something actually happened. Then we have predictive. And this is the need of our, you want to upfront learn things so that you can strategize. So here we say what may happen. And finally, the prescriptive. These are the solutions that we can strategize. These are the 4 stages that we discussed. Now, any project that we are going to do as part of data science, we have to follow this methodology, CRISP DM, and it has 6 stages. So we started understanding this yesterday. The first step basically says understanding the business. Okay, let me take you to that slide. Yeah, we'll go back to that anyways, but yeah, let me talk about this. So the first step of a project would start here. Cross-industrial standard process of data mining. You need to first understand the problem. Now let's say there is a scenario, and this is a classic example that we always take to explain why understanding business is very important when you are doing any kind of a project. Let's say there is a wife and a husband pair. Okay, very loving couple. Because there is a lot of love, wife dominates husband, right? So wife orders husband to bring milk packets. Early morning, wife has to prepare coffee and wife has to prepare food and all that. So she demands husbands to bring 2 milk packets. Now husband has to go, right? Somebody has to go. So husband is started to supermarket. Now, while he's starting, wife also shouts from the back saying that, hey, if you see eggs, then bring 12. These are the instructions that wife is giving to husband, right? A loving couple. Now, once the husband returns from the market, wife is started to beating the husband. Why? Wife beats husband. Can you tell me why? Yeah, yes, friends. Gargar ki kahani. Oh, okay. Oh, women are fast here. Sandhya, he got 12 milk packets. Nishita, he didn't bring eggs. As always, yeah, you have birthright to hit your husband. So, yeah, if you're married. So, did you guys understand what happened here? Oh, Sarika Jaiswal. Again, a woman answering the question. What happened, guys? Don't want to reveal your situation? Nanaville, he didn't see the eggs. No, that's a market. No, if he's not seeing eggs, that's okay. That's not a reason for wife to hit him, right? Forgot to bring milk. Amit, okay, that's the husband brains, yes. He had bring only 12 eggs, might be the case. Dishant. Yeah, really, this proves that male. Okay. Women are right. The answer basically here is he went to buy me. Definitely, you will get beatings. He didn't agree to go. Who will prepare food then? All right. He went to market, I'm saying. He returned. And then wife started to beat him. The answer here is a practical scenario, wife has all the rights to hit him just without any reason. But in this case, the reason is husband has brought 12 milk packets. He's bringing 12 milk packets. Why? From the business point of view, from generic point of view, based on these instructions which are given, did husband do any wrong? Husbands just follow the instructions. He started to go to the market following the instruction to bring 2 milk packets. But the second instruction says, if you see eggs, then bring 12. So he saw the eggs in the market, so he brought 12 milk packets. He followed instructions as is, no change at all. But was that the requested task actually wife was looking for? Was this the expectation for wife? No, right? Wife was expecting 2 milk packets for sure. And then optionally 12 eggs. If you see eggs, bring 12. So this is an option, but he brought 12 milk packets. So both are not wrong. Both wife and husband are justified here. Both are correct. Whose mistake is this? The mistake is of communication gap. Wife should have cross-checked and asked husband on what exactly he was planning to bring. What did he understand from the instructions? Husband would have cross-checked with wife, saying that, hey, this is what I understood. Is this what you're expecting? Right? So this would be the most culprit thing here. Now let's correlate this characters, okay, these two characters with client, and this is your project delivery team. So client is giving some instructions, team is understanding something else and following the instructions, and the end result would be something which is unnecessary, not useful. All the effort is gone in vain. You're putting all the effort, right? This is the reason why we say documentation is important. As part of your first step of business understanding, the crisp DM status, business understanding will not just come up with drafting objectives and constraints, but whatever you have defined here or derived here have to be documented. And we call this document as project charter. This would be the first document for any project charter. Probably there might be different terminologies we follow in different projects, but ultimately it's the first document. It will have objectives, constraints, it will have team, technical capabilities, scope of the project. It will also talk about out of scope tasks. It will have the timelines. It will have the budget constraints. It will have assumptions, right? It will have the project manager details, point of contact, basically POC. So a lot of these preliminary details will be documented in this first document, project charter. So what is the objective in this case for husband? He has to go to supermarket and bring 2 milk packets. This is a mandatory job, objective. Bring 2 milk packets. Second task, if there are eggs, then bring 12 eggs. This is optional, right? So you document these things. Say that, hey, wife, these are the two objectives that I'm trying to meet now. Is this fine? Can you sign it off? Only when the document is signed off, we proceed. Otherwise, your effort is gone for a toss. Right? So first step, very important. Once this is done, then we go to data understanding. This is the second step. And as part of the data understanding, what we do here, we try to see what kind of data would be there in this particular business scenario. At a high level, we are trying to identify that. And to begin with, yesterday we discussed whether the data would be structured versus unstructured. People who are coming from IT background, people who are familiar with technology, they know structure means it's a table format, a proper data model in terminology, appropriate terminology, we call it as data model, which is nothing but a table. Definition of a table is collection of rows, and each row is again a collection of characteristics or columns or attributes or features. And for each attribute, there would be a defined structure, defined data structure. Can you name a few data structures that you are familiar with? Anyone who is familiar with data structures, basic data structures. Anyone? No one?
Excel sheets.
No, I'm not talking about Excel sheets. I'm talking about each individual column here. Assume this is your employee table, employee database. What all fields would we have in the table? We might have name, probably ID to begin with, name, then age, then we probably talk about the gender or sex of the particular person or employee, then maybe designation, salary, department, etc., etc. So what kind of data would be there here in ID? When we talk about data structure, we are talking about what kind of data can this column have. Exactly, it can have a numeric data to start with. Further, if you talk about data structures, it could be an integer or a varchar, alphanumeric. Varchar is basically a terminology used in RDBMS systems. We generic terms, we call it as alphanumeric. numeric. So you are defining the data structure for the table. And you're saying that, hey, this is the content that I can have in this particular column. Then in name, we again have character. Age would be a float, integer or float. Generally, it would be float. Age will be in decimals as well, so we'll put in float. Gender, sex, again it is character. Designation, it is character. Salary is again a float. Department would be again character. So for each and every column or attribute, you are giving a proper definition, right? This definition in RDBMS systems or SQL based systems is known as schema. Logical definition of your data, right? Now, if your data is like this, then we call that as a structured data. Okay, but let's say now we have employee table, new age organizations. Employee table will have ID, it will have name, it will also have a profile pic for identification. Profile pic would also be there. Biometric details could also be there. Fingerprinting, retina scan, these things can also be there, right, for authentication. For each and every employee, along with these details, you will also have these profile picture, biometric details, right? These kind of values as well. Now, if you have these data points, if you're collecting this kind of data, then I cannot define the data type here. If I have to put a profile picture into a table, can I do that using SQL? Will that be possible? Anyone coming from the programming background or SQL background? Yes, okay. So can you tell me, can I directly store a profile picture into a SQL based system? Your Oracle database or MySQL database. Can I do that directly into the SQL database? Colab is we are not talking about Colab. I'm talking about a database system here. Colab is a tool which is used to push the data into your table. Directly using SQL, can we do that? Now, directly I'm saying, you have an image. That image cannot be directly stored. You have to manipulate the data, right? Only then you will be able to store that into SQL, right? So your SQL data cannot, or SQL database softwares cannot handle unstructured data. So we have something called as NoSQL databases. NoSQL databases, which are document based or column based, or you can say graph based. These are different technologies that is used here in NoSQL databases. These NoSQL databases, yes, we can store the files, images. So new age technology. Now, if you have to work with this kind of data, you want to perform some kind of analysis, then you need to connect to these new age NoSQL databases and perform the task. But remember, the data will not have any structure. So for each of this, you will have to decide what strategy you will have to apply. Okay, let me show you. We are discussing about NoSQL employee database. So let me show you a small example on what we have done in this pandemic time, lockdown period. Yeah, we should have marketed a little aggressively. Yeah, look at this. Yeah, so this is one of the product that we have developed for collecting the automatic attendance. You can walk into our office in Madhapur, Hyderabad. You would see this in a working model. So for example, if you're walking in with a high temperature, then your security system would not allow you in. In fact, it is going to capture your details. It will identify who you are, what is your designation, what is your, in fact, schedule. If you're working in, let's say, multiple schedules and you're reaching office well ahead of your schedule, then it will also say, it will track that as well. Why did you come early? Right? So these kind of things will might be right help us also identify insider fraud. And along with this, the attendance capturing and the behavioral analytics is also done. So not just thermal scanning to capture the temperature, it also has attendance system. This attendance system was developed before the pandemic, but we have added the thermal sensing system to the same product because of the pandemic situations. We need that, and this system will be connected to biometric system, wherein it automatically allows the door security. I mean, it will allow you in. The barricades will open, right? And once you are entering into the office, once you are inside the office working on the floor, it will try to track your movements. It will identify who is doing what, right? This is the system that is also being used for training purposes. So in collaboration with 360 Digit EMG, we have Digit MG, we have brought this feature into AI-based LMS system where it is tracking the user's attention as well. It is being also offered for a few of the universities for exam invigilation. Right, invigilator might not be able to capture all the details. He's obviously human, right? So he will be walking here, there. You would be looking at, concentrating at one area. The backside, other people will start copying. So this system would capture those details and alert, saying that, hey, this particular people at the corner, they're trying to cheat. So these are the benefits of the product that we have developed. And that is all because of your machine learning and artificial intelligence system. Right? Now, what the system is basically doing is, as soon as, let's say, I walk into the office, at the entrance, there would be a camera here. It would be scanning my face. Prashant, you had a question? Okay, I think not. Fine. So it is scanning me. It is capturing my identity, mapping it back to the database. Face recognition is happening. So my database would obviously be NoSQL, remember? Images should also be stored and the data should be mapped to that images. So it is quickly doing the comparison and identifying that, yes, this is me, my employee ID, my name. It also captures additional thing like the time I'm walking into the office in time, and the body temperature. This is something that we have seen. And if the system is identifying that I am one of the employee, the doors will open for me. Right? This is how we capture the automatic attendance for our employees. Right. Now, we have understood that the data is unstructured here, right? That's what we were trying to see here. Data understanding. You will have to upfront identify what is the data that you are going to work with. Structured, unstructured. Then you also have to see whether it is numeric or non-numeric data. So generally you will have both the fields when you're working with multivariate data, a big database, you generally have both numeric columns and non-numeric columns as well. Then we again further understand whether the data is, let's say, very big data or a small data, right? Those things will come into the picture. Now, let me again try and explain a practical scenario where analytics is actually helping businesses to grow. Okay. All right. So let's talk about this example. Imagine you are the owner of a small grocery store. You're running a grocery store. Now, what is the data that you will be collecting? It's a small grocery store. What volume of data you are capturing? What amount of data would you capture? Yeah. What do you think will be the data that will be collected? Products inventory, probably. The sales data, the invoices, probably customer details. You might have offers, employee details. Yes, that would be something very important. But it is a corner shop, a small grocery store. You will not have too many employees. Probably you will be dealing with this business, or it's a family business. So you will not have any employees in this case, right? So sales would contain the details of how many products would be there, inventory would be there, customers would be there. Apart from that, can we have any other additional details? Am I forgetting anything here? Small scale family business is what I'm talking about, a small grocery store. Not much, right? So if you look into this data, probably you will be collecting 10 MB data per day. Now on this data, what would you do? What can we do on this data? We can try and analyze the customer relationship with the sales, frequent visiting customers, frequently purchasing products. Not too many customers are there. You can easily identify that, right? You can also look at the stock, which product is being purchased along with which product, whether offers are there or not. And if offers are there, whether the customers are purchasing more of those units or more of those products or not, right? So this kind of basic analysis is what we can do on this data, right? And we can try maximizing the profits. And we can also look into my supply chain based on the stock that I have. And for analyzing all this, you probably require a simple, decent laptop. But you'll not stop here, right? Obviously, you'll not stop here. You want to grow a little bigger. Let's say now your grocery store has increased or improved and become a supermarket. So it has become more recognized. So number of customers or visiting is increasing. The number of footfalls has increased, right? So you have started a supermarket now. Now, as soon as your business is growing, the amount of data that you would generate would also automatically grow, right? Number of customers are growing, number of transactions are growing. The number of products in your inventory that is growing, right? So to manage this, your staff will grow. Everything is growing, right? So obviously the amount of data that we are generating is growing. Now, again, using this, we will be doing similar kind of transactions, right? We'll try to derive meaningful insights. Next is, we are talking about a organization which has grown to a let's say, branch organization. So you'll have multiple branches, not just one supermarket, but multiple branches, let's say across the state or across the country, across the state as you. So let's say you have 20 different stores in the entire state. Branches, you have opened the branches like Ratnadeep, as you. So now each branch is growing and each branch is giving you the data, right? and you're collating all this data, and collectively the volume of the data now you're generating has grown to 30 GB. I mean, it's not exact figure, it's just a randomized figure to give you the gist of things, how the businesses are growing and what is happening to the data that we are generating. So we started with 10 MB, we grown to 30 GB, right? On a daily basis. This is on a daily basis. So if you are growing on this kind of data, the most important thing is what would you do with this data, right? We can start doing competitor cost analysis. There are multiple branches in different locations. There might be competitors. So how they are doing compared to you in each location, mind you. What kind of campaigns are working for attracting more customers? What kind of offers are working? Which products might be in demand? What is happening to my sales? Can I forecast the sales? Demand forecast. Cost optimization. Can I optimize my product's cost so that I get more customers at the same time I do not land up into losses? Supplier chain management, supplier management, because you have so many branches now, you might have a centralized warehouse from where you are going to supply the products to these branches. Which product is required in which branch? Not every branch requires all the products in the same quantity. Based on the transactions, based on the kind of customers residing at that location, you will have different kinds of demand, right? So cost optimization, supplier management, future sales and demand forecasting, all these things can be done, right? Now let's say at this point you did not have any online presence. And if you're doing that, then you'll go bankruptcy, especially in these kind of times where you are looking at a complete lockdown. You have seen complete lockdown for almost how many? 3 months, right? So if you are not doing business on digital platforms, then you are gone case. Your business is gone, right? So you should have a website. Even before you go to multiple branches, you need to first do business on the online platform. Now, once you have come up with the online platform, the data that you are generating will just multiply, right? So now probably you're generating 1 terabytes of data every day. Your customers' feedback becomes one of those important aspects, because based on that feedback, you're going to streamline your services. You're going to improve your services, right? Now we have a lot of challenges if you look at these kind of cases in the traditional systems, SQL-based systems. This is where you will have to work with big data systems. You'll enter big data systems, right? So based on the kind of business, the kind of data the business is generating, the speed at which the data is getting generated, the type of data that is getting generated, strategies are implemented by the organization to use specific platform. So when you are trying to access this data, you need to understand this entire journey of the data that you are seeing. The business understanding will come into the picture, right? So that's basically your journey of how the data is getting generated. Again, using this data, you can also do real-time price check. That is one of those important aspects. Real-time price check. Online platforms do this already. You know that online platforms are doing this. We have portals where it captures the details of a product from multiple e-commerce websites and shows the price comparison. right? On the fly does that, reality price check. Now let's say you are a brick and mortar store and a customer is walking into your store. Very rarely people are doing that now. And the customer is looking at the price of a product, let's say iPhone, because it's popular one, I'm using that as an example. So let's say I'm the customer, I'm walking into your store, you have electronic store. I'm walking into the store and I'm comparing the iPhone price online with your price. You're quoting some price, XYZ amount. So I'm quickly doing, right, online check, and I come to know what is the price online. So can I have an embedded system here for the price, wherein on that particular day, it might do a comparison online and immediately adjust the price. And if a customer is wanting to check the actual price at that very instance, he might connect to the sales person saying that, hey, I see that there is a price fluctuation online. What is the exact price that you're going to sell at this point of time? Then you might also quickly cross-check the price and give the customer the best price so that you retain him. Right? You need to pitch in with saying that, hey, we are giving additional benefits. The price that you're seeing online might be less, but we are having these bunch of additional benefits. You might want to look at these benefits for this nominal additional cost that you are paying. This is called as real-time price check. Competitive analysis, right? So all these are the solutions that we can apply if you are familiar with analytics. And that is obviously what we are trying to learn here. So I'll go back to this step. So yesterday we were looking at this data types. And as part of the discussion, I was explaining qualitative, quantitative, structured, unstructured, big data versus not so big data. Then we will also have something called as cross-sectional data, time series data. Then you will also have the longitudinal data or GIS data. Then the data might have balanced incidence or unbalanced instance. So for example, you look into a hospital data, diagnostic center, cancer diagnostic center. There are n number of people coming in, right, for diagnostics. Now the report says, or let's say you have taken a sample of 1,000 records from the diagnostic center. Who is diagnosing whether a given tumor is a cancer tumor or a non-cancer, benign or malignant? Cancer, malignant, non-cancer, benign. How many patients would have cancer in this 1,000 cases, friends? If you're basically talking about, let's say round it off to 100, forget about 1,000. 100 patients if you take, out of 100 patients, how many patients do you think will have tumor as cancer tumor, positive tumor in a diagnostic center? Yeah? Take a random guess. That's okay. If I have 100 patients given the samples, the diagnostic center is working on those samples and verifying whether the cancer whether the tumor is benign or malignant. So in such cases, how many people or how many patients out of 100 would be declared as cancer? What do you think? 50-50? What do you think, friends? Yeah, what happened? Nobody's answering. %. Yes, it is very highly unlikely that you will have 50% cases as cancers. 30% might also be sometimes very huge number, right? So the data that we are looking at in these kind of cases would be called as imbalanced data sets. Because out of the 100 cases, you will have only, let's say 30 cases or 20 cases, which are of class A, cancer, assume. Non-cancer cases would be 30%, 70%, right? It's imbalanced. If you look into the similar case of, let's say transactions, bank transactions, yesterday we were looking at that example, right? So out of 100 transactions that are happening, the records that we are looking at, how many of those transactions would be fraudulent transactions? Out of 100 bank transactions or credit card transactions. Very rarely we will see a fraudulent transaction, right? So that is your imbalanced data, balanced versus imbalanced or rare events, imbalanced or rare events. Then we'll also have to look into the strategies that we have to apply for dealing with offline data or online data. Online data means as soon as the data is generated, you will be doing the processing on that. That becomes online processing, real time. So when we are talking about these data types, it is basically explaining us on what all kind of data you might get. Okay, this is only to understand. You'll not get the data directly. You'll not your management is, or your business or your client is not giving you the data. You're just trying to understand what data that you might have to work with. Now, once you have understood this, you'll also be able to deal with the systems where the data might be stored. So as part of the CRISP DM, now you are going to go with the second step, data collection. Now, how do you collect data and from where do you collect data? Yes, friends, what do you think? Let's say if I talk about the e-commerce example, from where do you collect the data for processing or analysis? Okay, somebody is trying to speak. Prashant, we are not able to hear you, Prashant. If you are speaking, then you're not audible. No, I think there is an issue with your mic. You're not audible. Google Trend now. See, understand the question. I'm saying you have to work with the e-commerce, the retail brick and mortar store example that we discussed, right? So you have to work with that store. Billing machines, okay. Cookies on websites from customers, okay. Feedbacks. Okay, the customer is doing some transaction. Do you ask the customer to give the details? Hey, can you give me your transaction details? I'll be noting it down. No, right? Customer would not give that. All these transactions which are happening, the CCTV footages, including that data, the employees' login times, right? The schedules, everything will be pre-recorded. And as and how a transaction is happening at the point of sale counters, in the back end, the data is getting recorded into a system. The event already happened, and that event is getting stored into a software. These softwares are called as databases. This is one type of data or one way to collect the data. There might be cases where you have to get the data live. Okay, you'll not get into the softwares and all that. There might be scenarios where you ask or you collect the data directly from the source itself. Right? So in such cases, you have to conduct experiments, design of experiments. You have to simulate the data or condition, business condition. And then you collect the live data. IoT sensors will do that. Yesterday, I was talking about an example, right? Food and beverages, their organization, a manufacturing firm. We have put the sensors to collect the live data. So the source is giving you the data directly. So the data that you are going to collect can come from two different sources. First one is called as the primary data source. Primary because this is where the data is actually getting generated. So you're directly collecting from there, right? So we call it as data which is getting collected at the source. This is your primary data source for your data collection. And examples are surveys, design of experiments, simulations, web scraping, social media extraction, right? You are writing a comment. Let's say you are writing something about the training. So I'm directly collecting your information as and how you're writing on the social media platform. That's your live data that we are recording. So it becomes primary data source. IoT sensors. Now these IoT sensors are actually working in two different ways. One, sensors will send the data to the cloud. This is basically like storing the historical events. The other way is directly live data is captured for doing real-time analytics. For example, aeroplanes are fitted with a lot of sensors. A twin engine airplane, a small twin engine airplane, turbofan engine one, it will generate around 10 GB data per 1 second, right? So it's a huge amount of data, and all this data can be stored into a cloud platform. But when the flight is actually moving on, right, in the air, at that time, you cannot say that, okay, let me collect all the data once the flight is landed, then I will do the analysis. You cannot do that, right? In such cases where you need to perform the live analysis, you are directly collecting the data from the source. The advantage of this is you are going to get only that relevant data which is required for your analysis, right? The disadvantage is it's going to be very costly and it is going to be a time consuming task. You have to slowly ask your customers, request them to give the data. Sometimes they will not give it. You have to chase them. So it's going to be time consuming. And yeah, very, very costly because you have to basically get all these details by investing a lot of money. Right? So pros and cons, both are this given here for the primary data sources. Now coming to the secondary data sources, here is where your data is already recorded and collected and stored. I mean, your data is already recorded. The data is collected beforehand and it is getting stored into a system, a software. Typically, these softwares are RDBMS softwares, relational database management systems, like your Oracle database, Microsoft SQL Server, right? These kind of standard examples. Your CRMs, FRMs, SCMs. Yeah, these are basically the systems where you have the structured data getting stored. Of course, you'll also have NoSQL data, big data platforms, where the data is getting stored, and this data is unstructured data. Right? Now, the advantage is data will be readily available for you to start working with it. It's not going to time consuming. You already have the events occurred. So we'll start with that data. But the disadvantage here is the data which is collected may or may not contain the actual information which is required for your analysis. You have to solve a business problem, right? We don't know whether we have the data or not. If it is not there, then again you will have to capture that. You have to collect it, right? So these are the pros and cons when you're talking about data collection. Clear? Any questions till now? So we have started with business understanding. Then we are looking at various strategies that you will have to apply, right? You have to understand what kind of data you will have to deal with. Once you understood, once you get a fair bit of idea, we'll start digging into data collection. And the data collection can happen in any of these two ways. You might get the data directly from the source, or you are collecting the data from the archives. So you have the data now. Now, once you have the data, then what you do, right? So that is something that you need to understand now. All right, we'll discuss this after the break. It's almost 3 now. If you have any questions, please ask me. And remember, friends, I've shared the YouTube link. I'm not sure if you have connected with that. If you have not connected, please do so. As I said, we will be doing a lot of free sessions. Yesterday, there was a cloud computing session that happened online. And yeah, 1 day ago, sorry, yesterday, yes. So you might want to take the advantage. Yes, this is the YouTube link. And yeah, if anybody wants to connect with me, I've seen few people who connected with me are from Oracle. So I was like, wonderful feeling, warm feeling. World is a very small place. So yeah, do connect with me, and we'll share a lot of information each other. All right, so just stay connected, and we'll connect back. Where is my stream? Yeah, we'll connect back in, let's say, 10 minutes. This session is not yet updated, Nishita. You will be intimated. You will get an email. Right. So we'll return at 3:10. We'll resume at 3:10 p.m. Please take a break and refresh yourself. All right. So as part of the sessions, data science introductory sessions, we are trying to understand the paradigm of how the projects are handled. And here we looked into CRISP-DM, Cross Industrial Standard Process for Data Mining. And as part of this, the first stage, which says business understanding, has been discussed. And here we will look into the objectives, the constraints, and we also have seen the project charter. Now, if you want to access this, friends, this mind map can be accessed. You just have to click on this. Let me share with you this mind map access as well. You can click on this and use this. You can go through this, right? If you wish to understand this even a little better, you might want to walk through this particular mind map. Not just this, we have other mind maps as well here hosted. We can go back. You see back button is there at the top. If you click on that back, you see there are multiple mind maps that are available. We have comprehensive cloud computing mind map, AWS cloud solution architect. We have big data. We have agile certified practitioner mind map. Yeah. Agile methodologies, then user stories, then Scrum Masters, right? So these are basically the mind maps that you might take benefit of. R and Python programmers, if you are programmers, then you might want to look into the packages that are available for data science related activities. AI and deep learning. AI and DL basically means artificial intelligence, and deep learning aspects were also discussed here. It's very similar to the CRISP-DM dialogues that we have seen, but when you talk about deep learning, these are the steps. Yeah, Vishnu, could you be on mute, please? I'm not able to mute you. All right. Okay. Vishnu, are you there? Yep, thank you. All right. So that's about the mind maps. You might want to use this for your reference. Now let us proceed. We have discussed about this. Then we have discussed about the primary data sources and the secondary data sources. Once we have the data, then what we do? That's the question that now we need to address. Once the data is available, we need to first try and understand what are the various aspects that are hidden in the data, right? So we take each variable, we call it as univariate analysis. We take one variable at a time. So in the data set, you take one column or one attribute or one feature or one variable, and then try and understand the data in a little detailed manner. But when you're trying to do that, there might be cases where the data that you're getting, the raw data that you're getting, is probably not conducive for actually being utilized. So we have to clean the data, prepare the data. So that would be the next step. Data cleansing, preparation. We call it as data munging, data wrangling. Then we also have concepts called as EDA, which is exploratory data analysis. And then feature engineering would also be there. You're constructing new features, you're bringing up new features, feature engineering. So you can divide this third stage into three different modules or three different substars. The first one would be cleansing. There might be unwanted data. You have to remove it. There might be data which is missing. In such case, you have to add it, right? You might have data in a different format altogether. You have to typecast it into appropriate data structure. So all these are different tasks. The first one is exceptional cases. The exceptions are called as outliers. For example, COVID-19 cases. Okay, COVID-19. People are dying because of COVID-19 virus. Now, if I say, hey, what is the age group of people who are dying? Then you might say that probably people who are 40 years, 45 years, 60 years, 80 years, right? You're saying 90 years, 85, 49, 70. So like this, you are giving me the age details, and you can see all of them are about 40 years. They are close above 40 years. But let's say there is one case wherein an infant is dying. Let's say 1-year-old kid is dying because of COVID-19. There are cases. So among all these senior citizen age groups, this small kid becomes an exception, isn't it? Age groups, difference. Entire age groups are closely lying here, but this one is exception. This exception would be called as outlier. So we have to do a proper outlier analysis, right? Probably this exception that you're seeing was because of a data entry problem. The person who was entering the data into the system, maybe rather than entering it as 51, by mistake, he has entered as 1. Maybe. It could be a scenario, right? So you have to analyze that exceptional case, and then you also have to treat that. You have to basically resolve that, right? So if it is an outlier, then look back into the cases and identify whether it is a genuine case or a data entry problem. If it is a data entry problem, then you're going to correct it and your data becomes normal. Isn't it? Your data becomes normal if it is 51. But if, let's say, there was no data entry issue, the data was correctly entered, it is not 51, it is on only. You have verified that, right? This data is correct. In such cases, what you do? There are two approaches again. We have to look into the case and try and understand, was this a one-off case? Because of COVID-19, not everyone, small kids are dying. Is this a one-off case, any exceptional case? If it is a one-off case, and if it is not going to repeat again, in such cases, you can remove this from your analysis. Remove it. You don't need this particular data because it's just one case, right? And remaining data will be analyzed. Now you might also say that, hey, this is not a one-off case. It might repeat again. From the business understanding, you will come to know that this data might repeat again. Similar scenario. In such cases, we will retain the data, this exceptional case, and then continue for our analysis. We'll keep it as is. So here we are basically talking about the outlier treatment, exceptional case treatment using 3 R's technique. The 3 R's basically are saying rectify, retain, remove. Then we also have various other techniques that can be applied. But yeah, we'll not discuss that as part of this discussion. So outlier treatment has to happen if you have an exceptional case. Then you might have missing cases. Say for example, you're recording the people who died due to COVID-19, right? Their details are being recorded. You have name, of course, age, then country, body temperature, where did he go? I mean, how did he reason? Right? Where did he get the COVID-19 transformed from, etc., etc. Various details are there. Let's say the body temperature was not recorded. The person who died, the last reading by mistake is not entered. So this becomes NA field, missing value. Remember, it's not 0. It's a missing cell. If you have a missing cell, then you have to impute a value. We call it as imputation. You have to substitute a value here. Okay? Because, see, this is important. Why? Because any machine learning algorithm that we're talking about, right, will have to go through this equation. Y is equals to f of x. Your variable of interest is getting mathematically defined by input variable, right? Now let's say I have a constant a, which is assigned to x1. Let's say b, x2 is giving you y. So here x is basically 2 features are there. So I'm saying a x1 plus b y2, b x2 is equals to y. Now let's say this is x2. Assume. So you are going to substitute x1 value. Let's say this is x1. You are going to substitute x1 value here. But you don't have any value to be substituted here. You're putting NA there. Now, if this is the case, how can you resolve this mathematical equation where A and B are constants, some numeric values? Then can I solve this mathematical equation with NA space in there? I cannot get y hat, right? I will not be able to do a calculation, right? So to counter this problem, we are saying that, hey, let us use a mathematical value there, a numeric value there. And that process of substituting a missing value with some logical value is called as imputation technique. We'll have to do that. Then we have transformation. Transformation basically is saying you have X at a specific scale. You're transforming it to a different scale, changing X to X, new variable, X transformed. This is required for making sure we have the properties of the data satisfied. The data that we are collecting, especially if it is a data which is called as continuous data type, it has a specific characteristics. So are these characteristics being satisfied by this data that we have collected or not? If not, can I alter the data in such a way that the data now follows those properties? You're transforming, you're not changing the data, but you're transforming the state of the data to a different state. Then you have discretizing or binning, right? Let's say a vaccine is being identified. Yeah, COVID-19 vaccine. Now the statement here says it works for age group who are above 50 years. It will work only for these people. So what you're doing, your entire age is getting segmented into groups, right? One variant is working with, let's say the vaccine is identified for multiple age groups. Different drug configuration is there. So for people who are greater than 50 years, let's say drug 1 will work. For people who are less than 10 years, drug 2 will work. People who are between 10 to 50, for them, drug 3 work. So you have age which is continuously going on, right? But you are dividing that into groups now. That's called as discretization or binning or grouping. Then we have normalization or standardization. This is basically to bring the scale of all the values to a similar scale. Then we have dummy variable creation. Dummy variable creation is very important, especially when you're developing machine learning algorithms. Dummy variables basically are created for categorical data. If you have a categorical data, non-numeric data, again, you cannot apply a mathematical equation on non-numeric data, right? So you have to convert this into numeric form. And that is done using this dummy variables. We call it as dummy variables. Dummy variable creation means convert non-numeric data to numeric format. Then typecasting, converting integer to a float or float to an integer, right? Probably an integer to a string, etc., etc. You're going to transform typecasting the data structures. Duplicate entries could be there. You have to handle that. Strings. Strings basically means non-numeric data, text data. You have the text data, then you have to work with that text data. Then we have to identify zero or near zero variance features. For example, I have a data like this. Employee data, again, I'm talking about employee data. I have name, let's say age, gender, department, salary, etc. Now let's say this data set that we are talking about is from a manufacturing firm, wherein only fields, right? Wherein only male group can work. Heavy lifting of some machineries and all that, that kind of a job role. So I'm looking at that organization and you'll not see any female employees. Assume. So there, in this column, you can see all males will be there. Now, if you have this kind of a column, do you require to do any analysis on this? Not required, right? There's no variation. Everybody is a male. You don't need anything there. Department could be another variable which might have near zero variance. There are only one department in that organization or for that particular. In fact, you are looking into a data set which is of an organization for a specific department, sales department as well. So you're taking a subset of the data and all these will be sales data only. So department would be sales, 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 sales. Everybody will be from sales. So even this is not required to have, right? You can remove these kind of columns. That's zero and near zero variance features. So these are the steps that you will have to apply based on the data that you are working with. Then we have exploratory data analysis. This is also where you will be performing descriptive analytics. Descriptive statistics are calculated. It's called as exploratory data analysis, and we are doing statistical calculations here. Right? Statistical analysis. So again, I'll take that COVID case only. COVID-19 case. We have recorded the data, right? Like this, COVID-19 cases, age groups. Let's say age is being recorded like this. Now in this age, you have different age group people, right? But can I represent the entire data here, this variable, using a single value? Can I identify a value which can represent the entire data, which can represent the characteristics of the data? Right? Yes, we can. That is calculated as first moment business decision. It will be your first moment business decision. But there will be challenges here. In the first moment business decision, there will be challenges. Let me talk about this. Okay, I have an Excel sheet. Let me launch this. Okay. All right. So data set A, I'm basically looking at, let's say, one country's COVID-19 fight. How many people are dying from different locations in that country? Right? So probably you will have 5 different districts. Or if you're talking about country, let's say 5 different states are there. From each of the state, let's say there are few people who are dying, so the data is recorded. In thousands, let's say I'm saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Each of the states have these numbers: 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, and 5,000. Okay? That is the number of people who are dying from that particular state or country, let's say country. Now on this data, can I represent, right, as the country, right? This is a country, remember, we're talking about 5 different states. As a country, can you represent a single value so that I can compare the data with other countries? How many people are dying in this particular country? Yeah, can we tell that? Yeah, I can, right? What would be that value? How can I represent that value? Average, exactly. So I'm saying on an average, this particular country has 3,000 people getting affected. And this is mean, right? Average. But let's say I have another country, assuming there is no fudging of the numbers happening. Few states are doing that. Assuming that there are no fudge of the values. So this is how you have, let's take more realistic. Yeah. This is the number of cases that we are seeing. Right? Now what would be the representative value on this particular data set? Yes. What can you say about the representative data here? We're talking about mean, right? And mean is calculated using a formula of adding these numbers out of total numbers. So total value is what I need. So I have 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. I'm adding all the values and dividing that with total number. This way you are combining the complete details, complete data, and distributing equally for each of that value, I mean each of this particular district. So here the formula is written as summation of x by n. This is how we write the average value, which is represented as mu. Right? But if you talk about this, it has 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 100 divided by 5 again. And when you do the calculation, you're getting 22. Right? So you're saying 22 on an average for this particular country. Right? That means you're expecting, the interpretation is that in every state, we are having on and around 22 cases. Right? Whereas here you are saying on an average, each particular state is having around 3 cases. Right? So this might be making a little sense, but this is definitely not making any sense, because out of 5 values, 4 values are lying here. 22 is somewhere very, very far away. So if I have to draw this, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is data set A. Data set B. You say 1, 2, 3, 4. And here you have 100. And we put a value here 22, let's say. Now if you see, this 22 is not becoming a representative value for the data. This is where your majority of the data is lying. Oops. This is where your majority of the data lying, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So your value that you are trying to represent should be close to this value, not close to 100. Right? And 22 is not even close to 100. Yep. So the point that we are trying to understand here is this extreme value that you are seeing is going to influence the calculation, statistical calculation, arithmetic mean. Right? And that extreme value is called as outlier. We have already seen how do we deal with this kind of an extreme value. We use 3 R's technique. 3 R's technique, which is rectify, I would rather say. First one is rectify, remove, and retain. Yep. So on this data set, you have extreme cases. Hence, calculating mean would not be appropriate because it is giving me a big number which is not representing the data. Hence, what we do? We go with an alternative calculation which is called as median, sorry, not mode, my bad. Here we are calling it as median, which is the middlemost value of the data set. Ordered data set, mind you. So when you have any data set which is jumbled, for example, if you have to calculate median, then first thing we need to do is order the data either into ascending order or descending order. First arrange them. And post that, after arranging this into the sorted order, then we calculate the median, middlemost value. Now this will become your representative. But you'll apply this when your mean calculation is getting affected by that one single entry, which is your outlier. Right? Yeah. Let me take this away. Oops, sorry, my bad. So this is 22. Now, this is about a numeric data. We have mean, we have median. We always go with mean calculation, but if mean is getting affected by these kind of exceptional cases, then we go with median. But if I have a data set which is talking about, let's say, the countries itself, India, US, let's say UK, China, right? Then you say US, etc., etc. Now, if I have these kind of cases, I'm recording the patient's nationality as well. People who got affected with COVID-19, I'm recording nationality as well. If I do this nationality aspect as well, then what will be the calculation here, representative value here? What do you think will be the representative value for your data set C? We're analyzing it, right? So, yeah. The value which is repeating itself for the maximum number of times, that is called as mode. Exactly. So US is the value which is repeating maximum times, 3 times, and we call it as mode data. This is your mode. Yeah. Any questions in these calculations? Very simple, right? Very, very simple. Looks like child's play. So the first calculations that we do on the data are these calculations. Measures of central tendency, which is also known as first moment business decision. This is where we calculate mean, median, and mode based on the data that we are having, based on the requirements, based on the analysis. You are going to calculate with one of those 3 measures, mean, median, or mode. Remember, it is the first calculation which is representing or expressing the characteristics of the entire data. Next, we have second moment business decision. As soon as you have identified the characteristic, mean, you also have to look at the data saying that, hey, do I have each and every data point, right, a value which is exactly like mean, because mean is a representative value for the entire data set, right? So from that perspective, do I have all the data that we are talking about here, the entire data set that we are talking about, has values which are exactly similar to mean? For example, if I talk about COVID-19 age cases, let's say when you calculated the age, average age, you found that the average age is 40 years. Among all those people who are dying due to COVID-19, when you have taken the data and when you have analyzed it and calculated the first moment, you got, let's say, as 40 years. Does that mean everyone who is dying is exactly 40 years? Obviously not, right? Obviously not. So how is that varying? How is each data point varying from this center representative value? You're saying it is a characteristic, right, for the data. Let's say this is your data, or let me say this is your representation, mean. We are saying it is 40 years. But you have close to, let's say, 100,000 records, details of patients who died. Age group, let's say, age. Now, given the mean age of 40 years, out of these 100,000 people who got affected, not everyone will have exactly 40 years. Somebody would be, let's say, 80. Somebody would be 100. Somebody would be maybe 10 years. Somebody would be 30 years, right? So like this, you might have spread of the data with reference to, we are saying, the center. With reference to the center, we are going to do the calculations. So here this particular patient is having age of 80 years, whereas the average was only 40 years. So this person who got affected by COVID-19 is saying that he was double the age of, right, double the standard age of people who were affected by COVID-19. Right, 80 years, 40 years and 80 years. Then this person is 100 years, good, 60 years difference is there. Similarly here. Yeah, and here, if you see here, you're saying mean age is 40 years, but here you have 10 years, right? So there is a difference between these two as 30 years. So as kid is getting affected by COVID-19, who is 30 years below the standard value that we have found out. That's the variation that we are seeing. And the variations, or the second moment, is basically talking about spread of the data. So in another expression, in another way of expression is, this is my data set. My data is spread across like this. Now, given this spread, what is the center? So this is the center. We have identified that. This is nothing but your mean. From this center, how is each value different from other? Each value is different, right? So how is that different from each other? That is captured in the second moment. So in order to capture that, we will do the difference between the x variable with respect to the center, mu. And the formula keeps on going on. It's only one distance, right? Probably this is what you're talking about, but you have a multiple data points in that particular data set, multiple points. For each point, you are doing the calculation and adding those differences. But we are not interested in only the, we are interested in only the magnitude. We are not interested in whether it is less side or whether it is on the upper side. So to remove that, we take square and then divided with n. Square magnitude is what you're taking. And once it is obtained, you'll be dividing it by total number. Right? So yeah, that's basically your x minus mu whole square by n is the formula. So second moment, measures of dispersion. You can see variance, standard deviation, and range. Range is very important again. These two are same. It's only for the calculation purpose they are represented as two different things, because variance is saying x minus mu whole square by n, whereas standard deviation is saying square root of the same. Saying square root of same. Right? So these two are same, which are talking about average spread of each data point with respect to the center. On an average, how is each data point spread? Okay, so that's your variance or standard deviation. Now range is talking about the boundaries. We're saying the data is spread fine, but between what interval? So here we will have minimum value, here you will have maximum value, and the range is equals to max minus minimum. This is your range in which your data is spread. Range is max minus minimum. So these are your second moment business decision. So we have first moment, which is talking about the concentration or the representation of the data. And the second moment is talking about the spread of the data. Right? And similarly, you have third moment, fourth moment calculations as well. But yeah, these are not much interpreted. We're not going into these concepts because the limitation of the time that we have. Post this, once we are calculating the EDA calculations, I mean statistical calculations, we will also have to visually inspect the data using these plots, graphical representation, reporting, right? And here we will have different types of reports: bar chart, box plots, pie charts, histograms, strip plots. So all these are your univariate analysis, univariate visualization techniques. Univariate because you are taking one variable and then picturizing it, right? And you can also do bivariate analysis. You'll take two variables together and then visualize it. That's becoming your bivariate analysis, which is generally a scatter plot that we talk about, X and Y plane. And then we also have multiple variables visualization techniques, right? So once you visualize the data, the visualization would actually help us understand the data in a much better way. You'll be able to look at the data and tell stories about it, right? Visual representations are very, very important. So these are the steps as part of your EDA. You'll also probably want to have a feature engineering concept. Feature engineering concept basically says, try and bring out new variables which may be more relevant in trying to understand your data or business scenario. For example, let's say the COVID-19 cases, the data that we have collected is giving the GPS coordinates, right? The Setu app that we have, right? Arogya Setu. Let's imagine it is capturing the details about the person, each individual person, the risk factor is calculated, and it is capturing the GPS location of the patient, of that particular suspect. Now, GPS coordinate means you will get latitude and longitude, right? But can I combine this latitude and longitude and say this is the location? That's feature engineering for us. You're constructing new feature location using two different features, latitude and longitude. Now this new feature location would be more useful for our analysis rather than latitude and longitude, right? So that's feature engineering for us. Feature selection is also something that we have to look at. What all features have to be considered when you have a lot of features provided to you, right? So that is also something we need to study. So these are your steps, or the third step as part of your CRISP DM. And this third step that we've just discussed is going to be the most important and time consuming stage of developing a product, data science product or a solution. Out of all this, 60 to 75% of the effort goes in this one stage, third stage, data cleaning stage, EDA stage, and feature engineering stage. Collectively, 60 to 75% of the information is falling here, right? Remaining is very easy. The remaining 25% of the effort is distributed among various other cases. Yeah, this is how the efforts are also classified. Now tomorrow we will discuss about the machine learning algorithms and how they are classified, and how do you evaluate a machine learning algorithm, right? And you'll also see what are the strategies that you have to look at when you are trying to deploy the solution to the client in real-time scenarios. So these are the things that we will be looking at, and probably we'll also do one specific use case hands-on. Okay, we'll take one use case and we will try to implement, right, a use case and derive insights from that. All right. So any questions for the day? Do we have any questions? No? Yeah, friends? All right. I'm assuming no questions. Okay. Fine. Yeah, got it. All right, friends. So tomorrow we will look further into the stages, various other stage, the remaining 3 stages. And then we will also see the case study. As I promised, we'll do an example hands-on and try to learn more about the implementation part. All right. With that, let me take a leave. And you people take care. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you.